The film reel flickers in the darkness. Hitler leans forward, watching intently. On screen, 8 men hang from meat hooks suspended by piano wire around their necks. They twist slowly, dying by strangulation, not the quick drop of a noose. The death is not quick. It takes minutes, sometimes hours. Some were cut down while still alive, then hoisted back up, all for the camera. Hitler ordered this filmed. He watched it repeatedly. And these men, these 8 dying before his eyes, were not enemy soldiers. They were his own generals. This is the story of how Hitler executed the men who tried to kill him, why he chose piano wire, and what the footage reveals about his descent into madness. But first, you need to understand what these men did that made Hitler so enraged he wanted them to die like cattle. July 20th, 1944. The Wolfschanze, Hitler's military headquarters in East Prussia. A briefcase bomb explodes during a military conference. 4 people die in the blast. Hitler survives. Barely. The bomb was planted by Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, part of a conspiracy involving hundreds of German officers, aristocrats, and civilians. They called it Operation Valkyrie. The plan: kill Hitler, negotiate peace with the Allies, save Germany from total destruction. But when the bomb failed to kill him, the conspiracy collapsed within hours. Hitler's rage was biblical. This wasn't an enemy attack. This was betrayal. His own officers, his own Wehrmacht, men he'd trusted, men he'd promoted, men who'd sworn loyalty had tried to murder him. The Gestapo arrested thousands. Torture followed. Names were extracted. The conspiracy reached higher than Hitler had imagined, into the army's general staff, into old Prussian aristocracy, into the very heart of the Wehrmacht. Hitler wanted revenge, not just execution, punishment, humiliation, suffering. And he wanted it filmed, but the method he chose was so cruel, even hardened executioners hesitated. I'll tell you exactly what he ordered in a moment. Hitler didn't want firing squads. Too honorable. Too military. These men didn't deserve a soldier's death. He didn't want hanging by rope. Too quick. The standard drop breaks the neck instantly, death in seconds. He wanted them strangled, slowly, publicly, humiliated, piano wire, or at least that's what witnesses called it. Some say it was thin hemp cord, but the effect was the same, a slow, agonizing death that Hitler could watch again and again, thin steel cable or cord thin enough to cut into flesh. When looped around a neck and suspended from above, it doesn't snap the neck like rope. It slowly constricts the throat. Death by asphyxiation. 5 to 20 minutes of conscious suffering, sometimes longer. But Hitler added another element that turned execution into theater. Meat hooks. The condemned weren't just hanged, they were suspended from meat hooks, the kind used in slaughterhouses for hanging beef carcasses. The hook was placed through the back of the collar or under the armpit. The wire looped around the neck. The result: the victim's own weight slowly pulled the wire tighter. Struggling made it worse. Every movement increased the pressure. Hitler's architect, Albert Speer, later described what Hitler did with the footage. It's one of the most disturbing testimonies from the entire war. But before the executions, Hitler wanted something else: public humiliation. Judge Roland Freisler presided over the People's Court. He didn't conduct trials. He conducted theater. The defendants were brought in without belts or suspenders. Their pants fell down during the trial. This wasn't accidental. It was designed. Field Marshal Erwin von Witzleben, one of Germany's most respected generals, stood before the court trying to hold up his trousers while Freisler screamed at him. "You dirty old man, stop fiddling with your trousers!" The courtroom erupted in laughter. This was filmed too. Von Witzleben, exhausted, humiliated, finally spoke. "You can hand us over to the executioner, but in 3 months the outraged and harried people will bring you to book and drag you through the dirt in the streets." Freisler screamed back, "You will hang like cattle." The defendants weren't allowed lawyers, weren't allowed to present evidence. The verdict was decided before the trial began. Executions were scheduled within hours of sentencing, but Freisler never saw the final executions himself. In February 1945, an Allied bomb did to him what he'd done to hundreds of others. I'll tell you exactly how he died and why some called it justice. First, let me tell you what happened in that execution chamber. August 8, 1944, 5 days after the trial. Plötzensee Prison, Berlin. The execution chamber had been modified specifically for this. In September 1943, Allied bombing had destroyed the prison's guillotine. The Nazis responded by installing a gallows with 8 meat hooks mounted on a rail along the ceiling, like a slaughterhouse. A 16mm camera was set up to record everything. The first group of conspirators was brought in. Field Marshal Erwin von Witzleben, former commander of Army Group D, General Erich Höppner, Panzer Commander, hero of the Eastern Front. Major General Helmuth Stief, Chief of the Army High Command. Peter Graf Yorck von Wartenberg, aristocrat, descendant of famous Prussian generals. These weren't criminals. They were Germany's military elite, aristocrats, men from families that had served Prussia for centuries. They were stripped, their clothes removed or left hanging loosely to degrade them further. One by one, the wire was looped around their necks. They were hoisted onto the meat hooks, their feet dangled, the wire tightened, and the camera rolled. Hitler had ordered the executioners to work slowly, no rushing. He wanted to see every moment, every expression, every second of suffering. The men twisted as they strangled. Some took 5 minutes to die. Some took 15. Field Marshal von Witzleben reportedly took nearly 20 minutes. But here's the most disturbing part, something that reveals just how far Hitler had descended into madness. In some cases, executioners would cut victims down while they were still alive, revive them if possible, then hoist them back up, film more footage. Hitler wanted to watch them die multiple times. The footage was brought to Hitler the same day. He watched it in his private screening room at the Wolfschanze. Albert Speer, Hitler's architect, later testified about what he witnessed. Hitler watched the film with glee, rewinding the deaths to watch them again from the beginning. He was fascinated by the suffering, replaying the execution footage as if it were a favorite movie, obsessed by the faces of men he once called comrades. Over the next 6 months, more than 200 conspirators were executed. Not all filmed. Fewer than 30 executions were recorded, but all hanged by wire from meat hooks at Plötzensee. But the cruelty didn't stop with the conspirators themselves. What the Nazis did to their families was equally horrifying. The Nazis had a policy called Sippenhaft, kin liability. If you were guilty, your family was guilty. The wives of conspirators were arrested, sent to concentration camps, some executed. The children of conspirators were taken, given new names, placed in Nazi orphanages or adopted by SS families to be raised as good National Socialists. Entire aristocratic bloodlines, families that had served Germany for centuries, were wiped out. 3 generations executed or disappeared. The Nazis documented everything: lists of names, family trees marked with red X's, children's new identities recorded in ledgers. Some of these children didn't learn their real names until after the war. Some never learned. This wasn't just execution. This was erasure. But the physical evidence of what happened in that chamber still exists today, and you can visit it. After the war, most of the execution films were destroyed. Hitler's personal collection burned in Berlin during the final days. But fragments survived. American troops captured some footage when they took Germany in 1945. The films were classified, too graphic for public release, too disturbing even for war crimes trials. At Nuremberg, the judges had photographs and testimony. That was enough. The actual films were never shown. What happened to the originals? Most destroyed by the SS. Some may still exist in Russian archives. They captured Berlin, and may have found reels the Americans didn't. But if they exist, they've never been released. What we have are photographs, stills from the executions. They show exactly what Hitler watched. Men hanging from hooks, wire cutting into their necks, faces contorted in agony. Today, Plötzensee Prison is a memorial. The execution chamber has been preserved. The beam where the hooks hung still exists. You can see it, touch it. The 8 hooks are gone now, but the rail remains. And on the wall, a simple plaque lists the names of those who died there. More than 3,000 people were executed at Plötzensee during the Third Reich. The July plotters were just the most famous. But why piano wire? Why this specific, sadistic method? The answer reveals everything about Hitler's mental state in 1944. Hitler's thinking reveals his psychology at this point in the war. First, humiliation. These men were Prussian aristocrats, military elite. They valued honor above all. A firing squad would have been an honorable death. Piano wire from meat hooks was designed to strip away every shred of dignity, to reduce them to hanging meat. Second, suffering. Hitler wanted them to suffer consciously, to feel every second, to regret, to experience physical agony as punishment for betrayal. Third, terror. The executions were meant to send a message. Anyone else thinking of betraying Hitler would know exactly what awaited them. Fourth, personal satisfaction. By 1944, Hitler was paranoid, unstable, addicted to methamphetamine, showing signs of Parkinson's disease. His grip on reality was slipping. The conspiracy confirmed his darkest fears. Everyone was against him. Watching the executions gave him a sense of control, of power. Some accounts say he showed the footage to dinner guests. This wasn't the calculated dictator of 1939. This was a man descending into madness. And remember Judge Freisler, the man who screamed, "You will hang like cattle." His fate was darkly appropriate. Roland Freisler, the screaming judge of the People's Court, sentenced hundreds to death. He took pleasure in humiliating defendants, mocking their appearance, cutting them off when they tried to speak. On February 3, 1945, he was presiding over another trial. Another defendant, another death sentence. An Allied air raid hit Berlin. The courthouse was struck. A beam fell. It crushed Freisler's skull. He died instantly, clutching the files of the man he was sentencing. Some called it poetic justice, the man who'd sent hundreds to brutal deaths, killed by a falling beam while condemning yet another victim. But the conspirators he sentenced, the men who died on piano wire, they didn't die as traitors. History remembers them differently. Who were these men who died on piano wire? Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg placed the bomb, lost an eye, a hand, and 2 fingers in North Africa. Still believed in Germany, just not in Hitler. He famously said before planting the bomb, "It is time to do something." Field Marshal Erwin von Witzleben had served Germany since World War I. Decorated, respected. He'd watched Hitler lead Germany to ruin and decided someone had to stop him. General Ludwig Beck, former chief of the German General Staff. He'd opposed Hitler's war plans from the beginning. Resigned in protest in 1938, joined the conspiracy. When it failed, he tried to shoot himself. Twice, failed. An SS officer finished him. Karl Gödler, former mayor of Leipzig, civilian, conservative, believed in Germany, hated Nazism, would have been chancellor if the coup succeeded, hanged on piano wire. They weren't perfect men. Some had served Hitler willingly for years. Some had committed their own crimes. But in the end, they saw the truth. Hitler was destroying Germany. And they tried to stop him. They failed. Hitler survived another 9 months. Germany lost another 1 million soldiers. Another 1 million civilians dead in bombings. The Holocaust continued. The conspirators died believing they'd failed completely. But history remembers them as among the few Germans who tried. On July 20th, 1944, a bomb exploded in Hitler's headquarters. 8 men would die hanging from piano wire as a result. 200 more would follow. Hitler wanted them remembered as traitors, their deaths a warning. Instead, they're remembered as heroes, men who saw evil and acted, even knowing they'd lose. The piano wire executions were meant to terrify, to prove Hitler's power. Instead, they proved his madness. Today, you can visit Plötzensee Prison, stand in the execution chamber, see the beam where the hooks hung, read the names on the wall. The footage Hitler loved to watch is gone, destroyed or hidden in archives. But the memory remains, not of traitors dying, but of the last honorable men in Nazi Germany who chose death over complicity. Hitler watched them die on film again and again, convinced he'd won. He was wrong. Their names endure. His legacy is ash.